Hi everyone, my name is Emery Gloner. I go by they, them pronouns and identify as non-binary, and my research project is about gender-affirming care, specifically in the regard to minors. Did you know that less than 1% of the population is made up by transgender people? Did you know that only 0.73% of those are minors? Now I wonder how many attempts to ban transgender care you have heard of, or how many times you've heard the narrative that gender-affirming care is harmful to minors. I could bet money that you have heard an overwhelming amount of negative speech toward transgender people. But in all reality, we're only talking about less than 1% of our population. I'm throwing all these percentages and questions at you in the hope that you realize how important this topic is. Gender-affirming care can be the line between life and death for transgender individuals. The media and politicians force transgender people to walk that line every single day of their lives. I just said a lot of words, some of which you may have heard before, some may be new, so I'm going to make sure we all start on the same page. Gender identity can be defined as a person's internal sense of being male, female, a combination of both, or neither. Everyone has a gender identity. Some people just don't match the sex they were born as. This is where gender-affirming care comes in. Gender-affirming care can be defined as social, psychological, behavioral, and medical interventions designed to support and affirm an individual's gender identity. Gender-affirming care is used to either feminize or masculinize a person's features. Testosterone, typically utilized by transgender men, causes masculine changes in the body. For example, their voice begins to drop, facial hair starts to grow, it becomes easier to gain muscle, gaining muscle mass, your body to become more masculine, you get stronger, etc. Estrogen, typically utilized by transgender women, causes feminine changes to the body. For example, a higher voice, breasts begin to develop, loss of facial hair, loss of muscle mass, etc. Transgender individuals are people whose gender doesn't match the sex they were assigned at birth. They typically pursue gender transition, whether that's socially, just changing their name, being perceived as what they identify as in social settings and in personal relationships, gender-affirming care, and some even go as far as gender reassignment surgery. Today I will cover the argument over how to treat gender dysphoric kids and whether gender-affirming care is the appropriate approach. I will discuss both sides of the extreme beliefs and what I've learned through my research. I chose this topic because I thought it was very relevant to today's society and in recent political climate changes with the new presidential administration. I also wanted to develop a deeper understanding of my topic. I've learned a lot about it over the years from my own personal experiences and hearing personal testimonies from the people around me. Still, I wanted to learn more about the political and scientific side of it. Through all of this, my topic has become more important to me by hearing about the pain that gender dysphoric kids go through. I sought to shed some light on this topic. My thesis was, although many parents believe it is harmful for their children to change their bodies, it has been proven to be life-saving for transgender people, specifically transgender youth. My thesis did not change. I now understand the action behind seeking gender-affirming care and why it can be seen as harmful. I have a better understanding of the concern for minors. I have also gained more knowledge to prove why, despite the fears, gender-affirming care is still extremely important. My research solidified my belief in the use of gender-affirming care, specifically when it comes to minors. I was on the fence about the usage on minors, but once I had learned that most of the changes created by the hormone therapy are reversible, my mind began to change. Not only that, but hormone therapy has been proven to save young lives. For every point the opposing side brings up, there is strong evidence in support of gender-affirming care to rebut these claims. The opposing side claims that gender-affirming care is unsafe for minors, but it has been proven to relieve feelings of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and even suicide attempts. Gender-affirming care is life-saving, not harmful. The other side also claims that gender-affirming care is forced onto transgender kids, but in all actuality, the process of qualifying for gender-affirming care takes months alone. You go through different sessions with long questionnaires to see if hormone treatment is the right choice for each patient. Doctors are not just handing it out like the other side makes it seem. The final point I saw from the other side is that gender-affirming care is mutilation to children's bodies. But what the other side doesn't seem to understand is that most of the effects gender-affirming care has are reversible, with the exception of the voice lowering or highering because your vocal cords begin to change. We are also talking about people who are approaching adulthood, not young children. These effects also take months to start happening, so you have time to stop before they begin to affect you physically. Finally, some people do regret transitioning, but there is an overwhelming number of people who say transitioning has saved their quality of life. Out of the 61.9% of people who have started gender-affirming care, only 13.1% have detransitioned. However, 82.5% of detransitioners have stated that they detransitioned because of societal pressures or pressure from personal relationships, not because they felt as though it wasn't benefiting them. To conclude, I've learned a lot about my topic. Some things were more shocking than others. I learned that people tend to go to extremes rather than being neutral on this topic. I learned that the opposing side doesn't have much factual evidence and is led by emotion. They disregard the biological evidence of transgender individuals and argue their opinion as if it were the factual truth. I was very shocked by how hateful the opposing side was. It makes me wonder if they even care about the welfare of children or if they just want to destroy individualism. I started my research with no expectations, not to be swayed one way or the other. I had somewhat of a stance, but I sought to provide stability for my ideals. Through the months of research, I gathered more knowledge, and I can confidently say I am better educated in gender-affirming care now, in comparison to where I started. Although I see the opposing side's points, and I have a better understanding of the fears they experience, I still believe that gender-affirming care is life-saving for transgender individuals, specifically transgender youth.